So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kat Vasquez. I'm the Water Resources Analyst for the Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. And this is actually our first landscaping workshop with the UC Master Gardeners, and we're really excited to have them on board to offer this free service for everyone in our communities. Um, so I just wanted to introduce quickly who we are before I pass it over to Valerie at UC Master Gardeners. Let me make sure. There you go. Just quickly to give you an overview of who we are. We're a wholesaler. We're part of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, so we're considered as a member agency. And we have 26 retailers, which also includes 18 cities, and we service to over 900,000 people within the 144 square mile radius in the San Gabriel Valley. So the retailers are basically the ones you take your water to, and they are the ones that deliver water straight to your homes through their water delivery systems. And then we get, so in the San Gabriel Valley, we get some of our water from up north, a little from the Colorado River, and of course from a local groundwater. And we are reliant on our groundwater here in the San Gabriel Valley. So 80% of it is from groundwater and 20% of it is imported, like I mentioned, from like the Colorado River or the State Water Project. We're also known as a special district, which means we're a local government created by the region's voters to provide a specific service to the community like we do for you all. And our district is also governed by 5 elected directors who you see here at the bottom. We also offer rebates for residents who reside within our service area. So since you're participating in this class to learn how you could transform your lawns, depending where you live, our partner agency, Metropolitan Water District, offers rebates for $2 to $3 per square foot when you replace your lawns with drought tolerant or California native plants. Additionally, you can receive $100 per tree installed, only up to 5 trees. And not only do we offer outdoor rebates, you can also apply for indoor rebates if you're looking into switching out old clothes washers, toilets, irrigation controllers, etc. If you have any inefficient devices. We also have our Water Smart Home Kit where you can receive water efficient devices for your home, such as sprinkler nozzles, shower heads, bathroom, kitchen aerators, and etc. And even other tools to fix some simple leaks in your home. And so all of this information I will provide in the chat. And then before I forget, if you're considering switching out your old indoor and or outdoor devices, you make sure that you look for this EPA Water Sense logo. So that means that you know you're buying the most water efficient devices in the market. And that is all for now. So this is my contact information. I'll put this in the chat. So if you have any questions regarding any of our programs or the rebates I talked about, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to Valerie.
Great, thank you, Kat. I want to say welcome to everyone. My name is Valerie Burrell. I am the program coordinator for the University of California Master Gardeners of Los Angeles County. And you may have heard of Master Gardeners before, but maybe you're not quite sure who they are or what they do. So I'm going to give you a quick intro to our program before we get started with our workshop. We are really excited to partner with Upper Water this evening to bring you the workshop on gardening with native plants. And our presenter this evening will be Master Gardener Rocsana Saddigh. Just a little housekeeping. We do ask that you hold any questions or comments till the end of Roxana's presentation, and then please drop your questions or comments in the chat if you could. All right, I am going to share my screen. All right. Can you all see that?
Yes, Valerie, looks good.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. Okay, so the mission of the UC Master Gardener program is to extend research or science-based knowledge and information on home horticulture, pest management, and sustainable landscape practices to the residents of California. And master gardeners all over Los Angeles County volunteer in all types, different types of activities, and you'll find them in farmers markets, festivals, fairs, in community gardens, school gardens, our very popular Grow LA Gardens classes, library workshops, and also online workshops like this. The Master Gardener program has a vision for all Californians to prioritize mental, physical, community, cultural, and environmental health through gardening and the appreciation of plants. And we have 4 focus program impacts that kind of guide or steer our program, and those are a climate resilient California, sustainable landscaping, food gardening, and community well-being. We do focus on training for critical challenges such as the fire resilient gardening, improving water use efficiency, safeguarding sufficient and healthy food for all. And that's been a focus of ours for many years, is helping residents of Los Angeles County learn how to grow their own food. And we also like to highlight healthy people and communities, and studies have shown over time that being outdoors and in the garden improves health, our mental health, physical health, and community health. We are on social media under at UC Master Gardeners Los Angeles. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we also have our website as well. You can reach all of those by the QR code. That goes to our link tree that has all of our links there. And this is just, I wanted to show you a photo of one of our past Grow LA Gardens classes that were taught at the LA County Museum of Science and Natural History. So I am going to stop sharing, and I will turn it over to you, Rocsana.
Well, thank you so much, Valerie. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight or this evening for this presentation on California native plants that you can plant in your garden that are specific to your region, the San Gabriel Valley. I am going to introduce myself. First of all, I am Rocsana Saddigh. I am a master gardener with Los Angeles County, and I'm also a landscape designer and certified California native plant landscaper, also Quell certified, which means that I'm a qualified water efficient landscaper. So all of these things will be pertinent during the presentation, I'm sure. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, how does that look?
Looks good.
Great. All right, so we're just going to be talking tonight about gardening with California native plants from the San Gabriel Valley and mountains, aka why it pays to plant California native plants and gardens. So we'll start with an overview. We're going to go over what the definition of a native plant as opposed to a California-friendly plant or a cultivated plant. We'll then go into why it's a good thing to plant California natives. Then we'll move into region-specific native plants. and then tips on planting natives. They're quite similar to our other Mediterranean plants, but there are some different considerations that I'll go over. And then we'll end with some resources, lots of links to things that I'll mention during the presentation, but that you can, I believe you'll have a copy of this presentation after we're done. And then we'll end on the Q&A. So please drop your comments and questions in the chat, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. So this plant here is not a California native specific to your region, but it does really, really well all across Los Angeles County, and that's De La Mina lilac verbena. It's a real showstopper. It flowers almost all year round. The bees love it, and so do the butterflies. So it's a great plant to have, and it smells really nice too. So when we're defining what a California native plant is, my favorite definition is from the California Native Plant Society, and that is that native plants grew here prior to European contact. California's native plants evolved here over a very long period and are the plants which the first Californians knew and depended on for their livelihood. These plants have co-evolved with animals, fungi, and microbes to form a complex network of relationships. They are the foundation of our native ecosystems or natural communities. So the big takeaway there is that native plants were here before European contact, and that indigenous folks used the plants for medicinal purposes as well as like edible purposes. And so the plants evolved with people. Some fun facts about California native plants. We have over 6,000 plant species, subspecies, and varieties native to California, and that's by far much higher than any other state. So we could be proud of that, something we can boast about. About 1/3 of these plants are actually endemic to California, which means that you can only find them here in California. And later on in this presentation, I'll highlight a couple of endemic species to the San Gabriel Mountains and Valley. So you've got some and they're great. There are 8 major plant communities, broadly speaking, and this is defined by CalScape as the chaparral community, coastal sage scrub. So those 2 communities will go into more detail because those are the 2 overlapping communities that we see in the San Gabriel Mountains and Valley. Then you've also got the grassland, woodlands, forests, alpine, desert scrub, and desert woodland, and of course the westlands. So other fun facts, our California state flower is the California poppy, Schultzia californica, which you'll see here in its full glory. It is an annual plant and it does flower profusely in the springtime. Really fun color. And again, lots of native bees really enjoy this plant. Then our state shrub is the big berry manzanita. This was a really recent addition, and I'm excited because it's a beautiful shrub. It's actually almost like a tree. It's quite big, about 10 to 15 feet tall, and it's part of the Arctostaphylos genus. And those plants, they're basically manzanitas. We have just in that 6,000, there's many of those, not over like 1,000 or anything, but many of them are manzanitas. So we have so many of them endemic to California. And then we also have 2 state trees, which are the coast redwood and the giant sequoia, just massive, very impressive trees. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So now I'm going to define the difference between California native versus California friendly / cultivated plants. Most plants that you'll find at your big box nursery will likely be cultivated plants from other Mediterranean climate regions. So there are 5 in total: the Mediterranean Basin, South Africa's Cape region, Southwest Australia, and Central Chile. The 5th one is actually California, so that's super cool. So we're one of only 5 Mediterranean climates on Earth, and that means that our climate is characterized by warm, dry summers and cool, wet winters. So if anyone ever tells you LA is a desert, they're wrong, because we do have like pretty dry conditions, but we're actually Mediterranean climate, which gives us so many plants to choose from. Cultivated plants like French lavender or rosemary, for instance, are very water wise and will grow well in Mediterranean climates, but they're not specifically adapted to our climate, our soil, or our native pollinators. So they may help the honeybees, which is great, but our native pollinators, our native bees, don't really care for non-native plants. And so they go hungry if we don't plant native plants or we don't have enough of them. Another great thing about California native plants is that they don't need fertilizers or amendments. In fact, if you add fertilizer to your California native plant, it will likely die. So it's best not to use fertilizers or amendments. They don't need pesticides. I won't say that they don't have pests. They can have pests, but they're not the kind that will, on the whole, there are exceptions that will decimate a community of plants. In your garden. And then they also don't need very much water. And so here's the big berry manzanita that we talked about, our state shrub, Arctostaphylos glauca, gorgeous plant. Okay, so now we'll go into California native versus naturalized plants. So a naturalized plant is non-native and it can survive without human intervention indefinitely. It usually isn't a problem until it escapes your garden. And then it becomes an invasive plant. And a good definition of an invasive plant is found on the Cal IPC website, which is California Invasive Plant Council, the great resource which you'll see at the end of the slide deck. So the definition is that invasive plants are plants that are not native to the environment, and once introduced, they establish, quickly reproduce, and spread and cause harm to the environment, economy, or human health. So I'm going to go over some of California's most invasive plants, the biggest offenders. One of them is instantly recognizable, and that's black mustard, which arguably is beautiful. This is in West Hills. This picture was taken in the Santa Monica Mountains. And this was last year in the springtime. And it is a beautiful plant. The honeybees love this. So it does have some ecological value, but the downsides are so much greater because what should be in this field is a lot of native annuals and perennials. So our California poppies, lupin, fiddlesticks. There's just so many different species that should be in this picture, and they're not because they're drowned out by this very tough plant. The other thing that's pretty negative about black mustard is that some of the stalks can grow up to about 5-6 feet, and they become fuel ladders. So this picture was taken. I think this was taken. It was 2 years ago. Sorry, because this was taken. The Kenneth fire that happened around the time it was during the Altadena and the Palisades fire, but it was a much shorter lived fire. Broke out just around here, and there were lots of oaks in this area, and many of them sustained a lot of damage because of these really tall, dry sort of grasses that were from the previous year. So that's why black mustard is not so great. Few other ones to look out for because some of these are readily available at your garden center, so please avoid these if you can. This website, PlantRight, which is linked below, they're kind of in conjunction with the California Invasive Plant Council, have these sort of top priority invasive plants. And if you like the look of the invasive plant, because they're not ugly, but if you like that, they give you alternatives that are either native or California friendly and not invasive. But I'm just going to go over some of the invasives. One here is the pennisetum. It's a green fountain grass. There are other cultivars. There's a red one, a rubrum, that is not invasive because the seeds are sterile. But this one's super invasive, and once you see it, can't unsee it. Especially if you're driving along a highway, the freeway, you'll see this all over the slopes. And it's because it outcompetes natives. It is wind pollinated, and it tucks itself in very nicely into the soil and then doesn't need much water. So then it just kind of grows out of control and will increase fuel load because it is a seasonal grass. So it does have a dormancy, and when it dries out, it's basically kindling. So if an errant amber hits it, then that whole area is going to take off with fire. So another one, this is super common, but this is more, I would say, more of a problem along the coast, but still try not to plant it in your garden, and that's highway ice plant. This does some interesting things. One is that it increases salt content, and most plants do not appreciate extra salt in the soil. It makes it harder for them to uptake water. It also decomposes slowly and leaves a large biomass because it generally mats very thick and there's a lot of dead wood underneath or dead plant material dried. And that is just, again, kindling, really bad for fire. And of course, for any other plants that are native that are trying to grow through this mat, it's impossible. So that's why that's not so great. And then finally, Mexican feathergrass. This is a beautiful grass. You see it a lot in gardens, but what I find in my neighborhood when I see this is that it's supposed to stay in somebody's garden, and then you see it on every parkway as you walk down the street because it so readily self-seeds, doesn't need much water, much like the pennisetum, and thrives in dry areas and increases fire hazard. So a little bit more, I'm almost done about invasive species, but this is important. So a little bit more on that. And that's just understanding the characteristics of both horticultural plants, so the ones that are grown to be sold at garden centers, versus invasive plants, and how they actually have really similar characteristics. So it's kind of accidentally by design that about 48% of invasive plant species had their origins in the horticultural trade. So if you look at the various characteristics like germination and planting in horticultural plants, of course, you want the plants to be easy to propagate and establish so you can make lots of them very quickly, sell them, and also that they establish quickly in people's yards. But that same characteristic is seen in the invasive version. So then there aren't that many germination requirements. And so, yeah, it's easy to establish and it will take over. Again, they both grow rapidly. They both have abundant flowers, which then lead to abundant seeds, which, as we just talked about, wind pollination, that will make things disperse very, very easily. Other environmental factors are that these plants are adapted to grow in many different regions and remain hardy. So in Los Angeles, there are lots of different microclimates, and these plants thrive in those. So the horticultural plants, and then their invasive versions equally. They don't have they can handle drought, they can handle salt stress, as we've seen in the highway ice plant, and so they spread really easily. And then finally, pest resistance. So ideally with a horticultural plant, you want it to be free of pests and insects. That's what you're kind of building towards. And so when you do that, once it becomes invasive, you've freed of any natural enemies and diseases. So that's why they're hard to get rid of. This link below is a great one because it leads to the UCANR, so that stands for the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources. Their website on integrated pest management, which is what IPM is. So you can look up all sorts of things on that website for pests in your garden. Okay. Just water there. Okay. So now we're going to talk about why we want to plant California natives. So one thing that I find is a real selling point. I feel like a used car salesperson. But a selling point for California natives is that they're generally low or very low water use. So on average, they only require about 1/7 of the water use of non-natives, and that's according to the Theodore Payne Foundation. They also, after about 3 years, 2 to 3 years of establishment, they require very little water in summer months, especially in the two regions we're going to talk about. And some require no water at all. So we saw like the Big Berry Manzanita, that would be really unhappy if it was being irrigated regularly in the summer. And this plant here is the chaparral mallow, and it is found in your region. So this is a great plant to consider planting in your garden. So another big reason to plant California natives is that we'll attract pollinators, both native and non-native, and provide habitat for native pollinators. So we hear a lot about saving the bees, and it is a really important thing to do because especially for humans, our food, I think it's 1 in 5 bites of food is linked to pollination by bees. So we need them. But we do have a lot of bees, a lot of non-native bees, which are they come from Europe, and there are honeybees. That's actually pictured in this blurry, angry-looking honeybee that's coming towards the screen. So these guys, they're happy with California natives, non-natives. They just want to get their nectar generally. But our native bees are more solitary. They have different habits. They have shorter distances that they can travel, and they are really picky. They want their California native plants that are specific to the region that they are in. And so that's why we like to plant California native plants. If you want to learn more about California bees, identifying them, there's so much to learn. But I really love this new book by Crystal Hickman. It's called The ABCs of California Bees. She's an amazing photographer and ecologist, so do check that out. And then we hear a lot about monarch butterflies, which is with good reason. They're pretty endangered, and it's a great thing to do to plant milkweed, and specifically native milkweed. So our narrow leaf milkweed, which is quite readily available at various nurseries across Los Angeles, as well as there are native, native milkweed giveaways. So watch out for those. It's not a plant that is going to look beautiful in your garden, I'm afraid. It's really something that will thrive in full sun, and it's for the monarch butterflies to get their nectar source, and then also and most importantly, for their offspring, the caterpillars only feed on milkweed. And so that's why we want to plant native milkweed. And then we also, in planting California natives like California fuchsia, Epilobium canum, a beautiful plant that will provide a lot of nectar for hummingbirds, particularly in late summer when other things are not in bloom, and in the fall. So there's that seasonality that's important too. And yeah, if you want hummingbirds in your garden, definitely plant some California fuchsia. And then, so ultimately, planting native plants supports native ecologies and food webs, from the soil microbes to the insects, to the birds, to the mammals that eat those birds, insects, and so on. So that's you'll be helping a lot. So this is California buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum. We have lots of buckwheats to choose from. This one is really common in your region, and it's all over the coastal sage scrub community, and it is a really beautiful shrub. Thrives in very dry conditions, and kind of has a pinkish flower, like white pink. You can see bees love it. So when planted thoughtfully, native plants are relatively low maintenance. I always say no plant is no maintenance, so there's that. But if you currently have grass that you're like, I'm sick of having this mowed, paying for it every week, every other week, maintaining lawns is kind of a bummer. So my suggestion is always, if you're not using the lawn, you can have a lovely pollinator garden. It's best if you're going to do something like that to have a landscape plan. And actually, as part of the rebate, if you do end up doing that, you do need like a basic landscape plan. And that's so it helps you plant the right plant in the right place. And I'll go into that a little bit more detail later, but you want to plan for the mature size of your plant. So when you draw it on your plan, so this is woolly blue curls, a really lovely native that smells like, this particular cultivar is Midnight Magic, and it smells like grape soda. Really fun one for kids, for sensory gardens. But this plant gets to about 3 feet tall, 3 feet wide, so you don't want to overcrowd it, because that can lead to various diseases and pests and things like that. They need aeration. And then finally, yeah, as I said, it's more of a seasonal maintenance rather than a weekly maintenance when it comes to California native plants. And then yeah, so the biggest thing, the takeaway here is that you're adding lots of biodiversity to your garden, and your garden will reflect the native plant community from which it is from, where it originally was from. So you'll have a variety of colors, textures, scents to enjoy. So the aesthetics are really a positive, I would say. And also a sense of place. So the plants, if they're selected from your region, it'll be a San Gabriel San Gabriel Valley native garden. So that's super cool. And from personal experience, because I've done my front garden. I had a turf replacement about 5 years ago. I'll say it's beaming with life. So there's constantly pollinators, but hummingbirds, birds, coyote, lots of bees. You name it, they're in my garden daily. And so the pollinators love it. Your neighbors will too. And so it's a win-win. That's how I see it. So this is a picture of a garden in Los Feliz. And this is the sort of orange flower, that very almost fluorescent orange is an apricot mallow. This also comes in various colors too. And then the plant next to it is the verbena that we saw before. And just that burst of color, different textures. It's just so much more interesting than either your lawn or kind of your standard stuff that you find at, regular big box garden centers. Um, so now we're going to get specific about the native plants in the San Gabriel Valley. So we've got the desert, coastal areas, mountains, and forests. So the term native plant becomes more specific depending on where you live. So it's important to plant region-specific plants. And I always say it's good to take a hike. So explore your local flora in the San Gabriel Mountains and valleys. Take pictures of plants. You may not know the names of them, and I'm just going to tell you about an app that I love to use, and that is Picture This. And I think different iPhones also have some plant identification uh, apps. So those are really, really helpful because they'll home in on what the plant is, so then you'll be able to find it later. And that will provide inspiration for your garden, and that you'll see that these particular native plants will likely thrive in your garden because you have similar climates, similar soil and bedrock. And then, as I mentioned before, the two main plant communities that characterize the San Gabriel Valley are the chaparral and the coastal sage scrub communities. These habitats do overlap, but the plants within each biome have distinct characteristics. Can you spot the difference? So we'll go into a bit of detail. This photo here is from the Angeles National Forest, a hike that I went on, and Trail Canyon Falls. Kind of a tricky hike, but not all of it. So I still say, go out there, go check it out. But then you can see the plants that thrive. So let's talk a bit about the chaparral plant community. It's known for dry, hot summers and wet, mild winters, which you may remember is what characterizes Mediterranean climates. Many of the plants in this biome are evergreen with waxy leaves, like the manzanita, and are fire adapted. So the manzanita, for instance, the seeds generally require fire to germinate. Um, and if you live inland or at a higher altitude, then your local wildlands are likely dominated by California lilac, ceanothus, toyon, which is pictured right here. Let me scroll down a bit. And also scrub oak, so Quercus bibidifolia. And so just think San Gabriel Mountains. This plant, the toyon, is found all over Los Angeles County. Fun fact, and you may already know this, but this is how Hollywood got its name, because this looks like an English holly. And if you look closely, the leaves are serrated, and then it's got these red berries in the winter. So it was believed, I think this was some sort of holly. It's not, but that's a fantastic, I'd say, like screening shrub, and it can even turn into a tree. It gets to about 10 to 15 feet tall and wide. And it is, yeah, evergreen, waxy leaves. Something to think about is some of these plants might be harder to grow in gardens with heavy clay soils, or that if you're frequently watering in the summer. So you may consider more of the coastal sage scrub instead, which we're going to get into soon. But first, here are just three of San Gabriel Valley's chaparral community. Some examples. One is, this was a really fun find, and that's the chaparral whitethorn, Ceanothus leucodermis. It's a whitethorn. The name derives from the color of the stalks, the branches. They're kind of a whitish tinge, and then it is thorned. So there are other California native lilac cultivars that are not thorned that you may appreciate more, but this one is absolutely stunning. It is aromatic and has profuse blooms in the spring, and usually late winter, early spring bloomer. So it's one of the first things that bloom in the garden, and it's water wise once it's established. So a great California lilac cultivar, if you want something more of a tree-like, is the Ray Hartman, and that's kind of readily available at your native nursery. But this species also comes at a very low ground cover as well. So and a fantastic slope stabilizer. So this is a really popular plant, sometimes hard to find and maybe easy to find in your region because it is found in your region, and that is the bush poppy. That is low maintenance. It stays rounded, so it doesn't require a lot of pruning. If you give it enough space, it needs about 6 feet tall and wide. Loves the sun. It is found on dry, rocky slopes. It is a butterfly magnet. And just a quick aside, I live in the valley, I live in Woodland Hills, and I tried to grow this. I was very excited. It's not supposed to be grown in my region. I've seen people do it and it kind of works, but it died. So this is why I say it is important to try and select plants that are native to your region. But I always say I have to test these plants out in my own garden. Okay, and this one's super cool. This is the word endemic is going to come up again, endemic to your region. So it means you can only find this particular manzanita, the San Gabriel manzanita, in your region. It has stunning reddish bark with pale green leaves, which is kind of a hallmark of manzanitas, and it has bell-shaped flowers that attract hummingbirds. And now we'll go into the coastal sage scrub community, otherwise known as the soft chaparral community. So if you live inland and, oh, so sorry, the coastal sage scrub is like inland, drought prone, but graced with coastal fog drifts. So I like the term elf in fairyland. That's kind of what this looks like. And as you can see in this photo, this was taken at Topanga State Park. It looks like everything could be really large. It could be like a 10-foot tree or whatever. And actually all of these plants are maybe no taller than about 3 feet. So it's like this gorgeous color in the springtime, lots of green, very verdant looking. And so yeah, when you think of coastal sage scrub, you think of Santa Monica Mountains. But that doesn't mean that these plants don't overlap into your region. These plants are also known as subshrubs because they're both woody and herbaceous perennials. So they have some wood in their older dry wood. Older wood is growth is woody, and then the new growth is herbaceous, and that's what you would be pruning like once a year. So again, kind of fairly easy maintenance. These plants generally have shallower root systems when they're the smaller shrubs like the bush monkey flower, Diplicus, and are aromatic like all the sages. And then some of them are summer deciduous like Artemisia mugwort. They're summer deciduous because this is an adaptation that when they are most stressed and there's a lack of resource, meaning there's not enough water, they will shrink down and they will just kind of hibernate until the temperatures cool a bit in fall, and then they spring back to life with rains, and they start their cycle all over again. But they are perennial. They will keep coming back each year. And so you also find some large shrubs, laurel sumac, also smaller sages like Salvia apiana, white sage, and also leucophylla, which is the purple sage. And we've seen some buckwheats, but there are lots of buckwheats out there. The buckwheat that we saw earlier was Eriogonum fasciculatum. California buckwheat is a prolific grower in these areas. CSS plants are also fire adapted, but the difference between them and the chaparral plants is that they will bounce back quicker after a wildfire when compared to woodier hard chaparral. And that I just say that to say it has more to do with maintenance as well. So with your sage scrub plants, like your sages, you're only pruning them about once a year before the rains, and you prune them down to a couple of inches of their new growth. And that's kind of all you need to do. You just enjoy them for the rest, you just give them a minute and then you enjoy them for the rest of the year. Whereas like manzanitas generally don't like to be pruned a lot, so that's why you give them space. Um, Another cool adaptation of these sage scrub plants are that the leaves are dry climate adapted. So you'll see they're kind of silvery and they shrink in the summer. And then in the fall, they become like more verdant, more green, and lush looking. Here are some members of the San Gabriel Valley's coastal sage scrub community. So this is foothill penstemon, and I've not altered this or doctored this photo. This is what the color of these flowers are. It's incredible. It's a kaleidoscope of color. This plant flowers May to June, and a really popular and great garden cultivar that generally does well in gardens is Margarita Bop. So you can watch out for that. Um, this middle one here is an interesting one because it looks immediately like it should be in a desert community, but really it is native to the coastal sage scrub community, and that's Opuntia, otherwise known as coast prickly pear. It supports wildlife, bats, butterflies, and bees. Massive flowers that are just stunning, and yummy fruit, but please beware. Please wear gloves and long ones, thick ones, and also eyewear if you're going to handle any part of this plant. Again, give it space to grow if you can. Um, and then we talked a bit about sticky monkey bush. Sticky bush monkey flower, and that is it's a water wise. It is a summer deciduous plant, so it will sort of shrink back and die back in the summer, but it will come back in the fall. There are lots of colors to choose from. You might see at your native nursery, they'll have what they call jelly bean colors, and there's like bright pinks and yellows, purples, reds, and even white, and a great nectar source for hungry pollinators like our native hummingbirds. So I'm going to go into some tips on planting natives. Um, So fall is the best time to plant and maintain California natives. You and your plants will appreciate the cooler air. The soil is still warm enough for the to encourage root growth, and you can take advantage of our annual rainfall to water your plants through winter, so you're not doing any excessive irrigation through those months. As an example, I don't water my garden from about the end of October all the way to probably early March, because especially if we have some rain. If we don't have rain, then I might give them a little bit of a boost. Um, so I know we touched earlier on the various um, turf replacement rebates, so I won't go into too much detail, but just to say that there are really great rebates available to you at either $2 or $3 a square foot, depending on your region. And that the idea is to replace the grass that you currently have with water-wise California native or California friendly plants, and that you there are also rebates on up to 5 trees that you can plant as long as they're about 15 gallons or larger when you plant them. And this is one of my absolute favorite native plants. And it's not necessarily really readily found in Los Angeles County, but it does really well in our region. It's kind of it's found in really small pockets of the state, kind of closer to San Diego. And it's the Palmer's mallow, Butylon palmeri. It is evergreen. It flowers profusely, almost year round, and native bees love to sleep in the petals. So I've seen that many times as I walk in my garden. I'll just kind of see them either circling around inside trying to get nectar, or they just sort of pass out. And it's very cute, but a beautiful plant. And another tip is to have a planting plan. So when you're drawing out a map of your garden, take note of the sun exposure throughout the day and any microclimates. So if you have like a large oak tree in your front garden, you may live in a very dry, warm climate in the summer, but under that oak tree, it's going to be a lot there'll be a lot of shade, and so you want to look for shade tolerant native plants there that like dry shade. You also want to consider the mature size of the uni plant so they don't bump into each other. We kind of discussed that before. And then armed with a plan, then it's sort of the fun part, which is going to your local native nursery and buying plants, which is something I love to do. And I've added this picture here. This is the chaparral yucca. You've probably seen these. Sometimes you see them up against the highway as well. And these have those really large flower stalks, kind of like agave. And they live fast and die young because once they flower, they'll die, but then usually they send out a baby, which is a pup. I bring up this plant because it's a fantastically sculptural plant. It's beautiful, especially if you have kind of a modern aesthetic that you're going for in your garden. But this is why it pays to draw a plan, because you don't want this plant anywhere near walkways, because it starts small and then of course it's going to get to its full size, which may be about 3 feet wide, and you don't want to have to slice that back because those are really sharp spines. This might be a good one for if you've got an area that you're like, I don't want anybody to jump into my backyard. This is a good plant to put there. It's kind of like free security. And something to keep in mind is that native plants, are not all of them, but some of them will grow slower than your non-natives. And while it's tempting to buy mature plants, larger pot sizes aren't necessarily better. Smaller plants are more economical, so they're cheaper, and they're easier to plant, so there's less labor. Young root systems adapt more readily to your soil after planting. So you just want to make sure that you wet the plant once you've taken it out of the pot. And then also wet the hole that you've made for the plant beforehand so that you don't shock the root system. And that's a good tip for even your Mediterranean plants. But yeah, I always say small pots are better than large pots for natives. Okay, and so this is a really fun plant. This is mountain mahogany found in your region. It's a woody shrub from the chaparral community, and it this is kind of late summer. It has these amazing seed pods that spiral and they shine, they sort of glimmer in the sun. So just a really stunning plant. In a garden setting, I would say this is a really good hedge or a privacy hedge as well, because it doesn't mind being pruned pretty narrowly. So if instead of planting like a row of ficus, you might think about planting this instead, depending on your garden conditions. So this is something we say a lot in the Master Gardener program, and that's to leave your leaves. So if you have a deciduous tree, I have a maple, those leaves will fall in the fall, and so you don't want to constantly blowing all those leaves, because actually the leaves make for great habitat and are free, nutrient-dense mulch that will break down and feed your soil. So it's best to leave the leaves, I find. And this picture is of another Eriogonum. This is buckwheat. This is the largest buckwheat we have in California, and that's St. Catherine's lace. This picture also illustrates something about seasonality. So this happens in late summer into the fall, where the flowers that were white, it's kind of a lattice of white flowers on top, will turn into a rust. And instead of just chopping those all off, because you might think, oh, that looks ugly. One, I don't think it does. But two, the bigger thing is that birds will feed on these flowers. So the seeds, they'll find all the seeds. And so you're providing a food source for birds when you leave this. And I think structurally it looks really cool. It's just different. And then we'll talk a bit about watering. So with rainfall, you might notice weeds cropping up, and it's always best to manually remove weeds if you can, so that they don't outcompete young native plants for nutrients. And weeding doesn't have to be a chore. It can be serene, it can be cathartic, and it's definitely instantly gratifying. Um, so before heavy rains arrive, though, you do want to prune your spent blooms and wayward foliage on your woody perennials like California lilac, pictured here, as well as desert mallow. But if rain is in the forecast, please postpone pruning to avoid introducing pathogens to your plants. pruning wounds. And I haven't written this down, but just something to consider too is that you want to sanitize your pruning shears every time you move on to another plant, because you don't know, it may have a pathogen that then you're spreading to other plants. So I like to just use rubbing alcohol, but there are various things you can use to clean your shears before you move on to another plant. What's fun about this picture is that it is the Ray Hartman tree-like ceanothus I was talking about, but this is in London. So just like we have Mediterranean plants or plants from other regions that do well here, this ceanothus does well in rainy London. So who knew? But yeah, just a gorgeous plant that flowers in the winter. I mean, yeah, it flowers in the late winter. And the best tool for watering, and this again, we say this a lot in the Master Garden program, is that use your finger. So if the first 2 to 3 inches of the soil is dry, it's probably time to water your native plant. And the way they like to be watered is infrequently, so not every other day or every day, infrequently, maybe weekly, every 2 weeks, and deeply. So it's kind of, you can just leave, if it's a drip system, just leave it on a slow drip for a longer period of time. Just going to touch upon the magic of mulch. Mulch is kind of a top layer of organic matter, that usually about 3 inches of organic matter that ideally is put on top of your soil, your bare soil. It's good to leave some bare soil for our native bees because they like to burrow there, and they leave us alone. They're not going to bother us, especially if it's somewhere in the yard that you're not going to. But generally everywhere else you want to use mulch. There are different kinds of mulch. Mulch is great because it saves water. It keeps weeds down, keeps the soil temperature cool. It improves soil fertility, and there are lots of different kinds. I would say about this picture here, we've got wood chips. A caveat there that the wood chips that you find at your big box store, usually they're going to be dyed. That's no good for your soil, so try and avoid those. And generally, I would say like cedar is really good, or redwood, because it mats better together. So different, and dry shredded leaves even better, but that will mat together and form a barrier over your soil, which is what you want. And a note about a free resource, but it does have some caveats. So I've put the link there, but please do your research. And that is chipdrop.com. So this company pairs residents with local arborists who are looking to sort of get rid of their eucalyptus clippings that they just took down a tree. And so they'll drive by your house and they'll just dump all of the shredded eucalyptus, for instance, which is very good mulch, onto your property. The downsides with this, it is free, but you don't know when it's going to happen. So it might be 6 months, it might be the next day. And then you don't know how much they're going to dump because it could be a lot. So it's probably a good idea to talk to your neighbors about, I may be doing this, I may have a chip drop. Would you be interested in mulch if I had extra? That way you can share the wealth. So just some ways to conserve water in your garden. We talked about mulch. You want to select drought tolerant and or native plants. Create hydrozones, so you place plants with similar water needs together and irrigate them accordingly. So high water needs together, hopefully you're not using high water need plants, that's going to be your lawn. Medium plants, water need plants together, and then low or very low together. And the reason for that is if you're mixing plants and this goes with planning, in a zone, then your high water need plant may need much more water, so it will dry out, or vice versa, your dry plants might drown. So that's why it's good to do that, hydrozone. It's best to generally water early in the morning. You want to control weeds, which we talked about. You want to avoid over fertilizing. And if you've got a fully native garden, please don't use any fertilizer. Save your money, buy more plants. And then adjust your irrigation as seasons change. A lot of people don't do that, and it's so good to check your irrigation too. So check your irrigation regularly, because you could have a leak and you could be hemorrhaging water. I know one of the rebates I took advantage of was it's like a flume device, which I got through my local water purveyor, and I was able to find out about a leak before it got out of control, and that's super helpful. You just attach that to your water meter. This is another one of my favorites. Like you've seen, these are all my favorite natives. But Salvia clevelandii, Cleveland sage. There are so many different versions of this kind of sage. Some of them, like this one, will get to about 5 feet tall if you let them. Others are lower, low growers. They might only be about a foot or 2 feet tall from the ground. Lots of different variations in color. You might get kind of a pink with some cultivars all the way to like a deep indigo. And so that kind of concludes the presentation. Here's a list of references you can have a look at your leisure. And thank you all so much for listening. I know that was a lot of information, so thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Roxana. I learned so much from this presentation. That was really great.
My pleasure.
I wanted to find out if anybody has any questions for Roxana. If you do, would you please put them in the chat? Please feel free. In the meantime, the one of our teams, Master Gardener teams, our community resources team, put together an exhaustive list of native plant nurseries in Los Angeles County. So I'm going to add that in the chat for you also.
Thanks so much for mentioning that. I forgot to mention that. It's a fantastic resource that
Yeah,
volunteers put together.
sure. Sure. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Or if you are feeling more brave, you can raise your hand and ask your question.
Don't be shy. I'm shy.
In the meantime, I am going to share my screen. Let me remove your spotlight, Roxana. I'm going to ask if you all would like to participate in a survey about Roxana's workshop. It's a very short survey. While you are formulating your questions, can you all see the Help Us Grow screen?
Yes.
Okay, and we're very thankful for you attending our workshop today. So the next screen will have a QR code where you can sign up to complete an online survey, and this survey will you'll receive the survey in a few weeks through your email, and this is totally automated and anonymous. So aside from reaching out to you about the survey, you will not get any other information or any other emails. And this is very important for the success of our program by you sharing your thoughts and experiences. So let's see if we can go to, all right. So as I mentioned, if you click on this QR code and fill in your name and email, you should check your email for a survey link. I think it probably comes in about 60 to 90 days. So 2 to 3 months after you've had a chance to incorporate the information that you learned from Roxana's presentation into your own garden. And the survey takes less than 10 minutes, and we really appreciate your help by you filling out this survey. Okay, do we have any questions in the survey?
I see one from John. It says, how can I get help with landscaping plan to replace my lawn? I have no experience with gardening. That's a really great question. I would point you toward calscape.org. They have a list of landscapers in your area who can help, but they also have, I seem to remember, they have a tool that's more of sort of one size fits all. It'll get you started on a landscape plan. So they'll have like, oh, do you want something more of a chaparral um, plant palette? And they'll kind of show you it's a graphic. So that's a great way to start. But I do remember Calscape had them. Also, California Friendly, there's a website, I can't remember if that's just called California Friendly Plants, but it's associated with, I know in my area it's LADWP, but it's also the Metropolitan Water District, that they may have some resources as well for you to be able to uh, create a plan on your own. But if you're looking for people to help, like professionals who design gardens or install gardens, I would say Calscape is really good, as well as the Theodore Payne Foundation. There's like some listings on there as well. Hope I answered your question there, John. Can
And
you
then,
mention some oh, go ahead.
no,
This is Matilda.
go
Some
ahead.
mention You said some edible native plants. So sage, any one of the sages are really good, just like we use like Italian sage. I will say from experience, and it will say this on various websites as well, like resources, that it is more pungent, so you don't need to use as much. Um, but I actually wrote an article about California native plants that could be edible. There's like lemonberry, which is something that you can, it's a fruit that you can, it's a shrub, but the fruit you can put in a drink and make sort of like a lemonade sort of thing. And it's supposed to be pretty good. There are various plants like yerba, not yerba buena. Oh, can't think of the name right now, of course, but I'll see if I can find a link to my article I wrote for the Master Gardener program um, about edible natives. But there are a few. There aren't a ton, but there are a few. And even like manzanitas, the name manzanita derives from like little apple. So I'm not saying eat manzanitas. They're probably not that tasty, but yeah, they're not gonna um, they're not gonna make you sick. But a lot of plants will. So please be forewarned, in the wild, don't eat anything you don't know what it, if you don't know what it is. Okay, I was not able to watch the whole presentation, but it was great. Oh, thank you so much. I thought it was a question. Thank you, Esther. And thanks, Kat, for putting in the bewaterwise.com. You're right, there are great resources on there too.
And you already responded to the lawn replacement, correct?
I did. Yeah, and if
Okay.
anyone has any more questions about that, or just wants to chime in with what their favorite plant is, non-native or native, okay. Are there native California plants that are dog friendly as well? Yeah, well, I have two miniature schnauzers. I have two little dogs who get into all sorts of trouble in my back garden, and I have lots of native plants. There are some that are not dog friendly or cat friendly. And I would say those are the ones you want to watch out for. So that is a really good point, that when you're looking at plant profiles, and Theodore Payne Foundation has a really great website where you can learn more about each one of the natives. Again, Calscape is fantastic for this. You can find out if certain plants are toxic to native plants that are toxic to your pets. So lupin is a beautiful plant, but the whole plant is toxic. Milkweed is also toxic. So you probably want to, if you've got pets, cats, or otherwise, you probably want to plant that somewhere that they can't get to if they're interested in nibbling on things. So I would say there are probably less toxic ones, but those are the ones you want to watch out for. And again, like barbed plants, like the Opuntia cactus, this is one that you would put like in your front garden, away from walkways and stuff. Actually, one other thing to say about dog friendly, a plant that I use a lot in plants for the parkways is coyote brush, and that is, there's a couple of cultivars, but one in particular, pigeon point, I think is what it's called. Pretty low growing, very lush, doesn't need much water, and it deters dogs from walking too much or like doing other things on the parkway that then you probably have to clean up, and also can tolerate a fair amount of dog urine, I found from experience. So I think that's a really great, I don't like dog friendly, but that's a great plant for your parkway. Yes, thank you for mentioning, Matilda, that the flowers do smell really lovely. Yeah, very fragrant plant.
Okay, I think that's it. And
Great.
thank you so much, Roxana. And thank you, Kat, for hosting us. Did you have a few words you wanted to say before we wrap it up, Kat?
No, I think Roxana did a great job and I learned a lot, especially in my
Thank you.
region. So we'll definitely keep those in mind, especially the dog friendly or the pet friendly plants, since we also have a dog in the house. But yeah, and then what I mentioned earlier is we do have a firescaping workshop that I forgot to mention in the beginning of the workshop. So we have it with the UC Master Gardener. So we will have it at our Upper Water headquarters. We're located in Monrovia, and it is free to the public. You don't have to live in Monrovia. Anyone can come. Um, and so I don't have the direct link right now, but just visit upperwater.org. And then you can navigate through our website, check out our conservation programs, our resources, a lot of the stuff that Roxana mentioned, like the calscape.org websites and such. And then on there, you can also see some upcoming workshops, especially the firescaping one. And that one's on Saturday, June 27th at 10 a.m. at our office. But that's all. I appreciate you for doing this workshop.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending the workshop. We appreciate all of you.
Thank you, everybody.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, have a good night.